Today's webinar is Engineering a Service Revolution, how to establish a strong and service culture and improve service quality fast. I'm your presenter today. My name is Ron Kaufman, and for more than 2 decades, I've been working with organizations all over the world to accomplish 2 fundamental results. Number 1, dramatically improve service performance, provide other people with a better service experience. And number 2, build a strong and sustainable service culture as a competitive advantage for your organization. I'm the author of the New York Times bestselling book, Uplifting Service, The Proven Path to Delighting Your Customers, Colleagues, and Everyone Else You Meet. And what you're going to be learning today has been captured in this book, our point of view, our experience, our case studies, the best practices, the global examples that you can learn from and you can implement as well. Now, who have we got here today? Where are you? This is poll number 1. Would you please go to your screen right now and click on the geographic location where your body is located while you're participating in this webinar? And while you're doing that, I'll let you know where I am today is in the country of Singapore, which has been my home base for more than 2 decades now, but I spend most of my life on airplanes. Last year, more than 120 flights, flying all over the world. So each of these geographic locations that you see listed, I visit on a regular basis, and I look forward to the privilege of meeting you in person. And so, our poll results are up, and the majority, as you can see, are from North America. We've got a group joining us from Europe and a few from South America, Middle East, Africa, and Asia. Well, I understand that because right now in Asia it's almost midnight. North America, good morning. Now, a couple of questions we should answer at the beginning. Number 1, what do we mean by a service revolution? I want you to understand at the beginning that we're talking about a revolution, not an evolution. A service excellence revolution is not needed by companies like Singapore Airlines because from day 1, they have had committing to an excellent service experience built into their DNA. They've been working on it from the first flight to the first city, and it's has formed the core of their outstanding service reputation. I've worked with them over the course of 20 years, and I know how they do it, and I know that they don't really need a service revolution. What they do need is continuous service evolution. We can talk about that on another webinar. This is not what somebody like Zappos needs. When Tony Hsieh created that legendary company, which they say is powered by service, they were already committed to having a service experience in the DNA of the company. And if you ever go out to Las Vegas and get a chance to visit their headquarters, you'll see that the culture of that organization, they say business in the front, party in the back, is totally committed to wowing people with outstanding service. They don't need a revolution. Their whole company was built on a revolution. A service revolution is not needed at organizations like the Shangri-La Hotels or the Ritz-Carlton. That's what their brands are all about. And it's certainly not needed at a place like Disney, which for so many years has been delivering an excellent service experience and has built their commercial reputation based upon that service. So we're not talking about companies that are already known for service. We're talking about companies that need a revolution in their culture. Service is already in the DNA of those other companies. They need evolution, not revolution. Today, we're talking about revolution. Number 2, what do we mean by revolution? The leadership of the organization wants to achieve a dramatic improvement in service to external customers, and they want to do it fast. And there's usually a strong commercial driver behind this. For example, the mobile market share for one of the largest telecommunications companies in the Philippines. We started working with them in 2010. Bang! Look at that kind of result. That's not a gradual evolutionary improvement. That's a revolutionary result. Or this company that I'll be telling you about during the webinar used to be called Naiad Results, and they were almost out of business. You can see what their financial results were looking at year over year, but look at the turnaround, and look at how quickly that occurred. This is what we mean by achieving an actual revolution. Or you might have a situation like Marina Bay Sands did in Singapore, where they opened the resort and the TripAdvisor scores were sort of flatlined, a little bit below the rest of the industry, and they needed to turn that around fast. Look how quickly, over just 4 months, and how dramatically that green line escalated in TripAdvisor. That's what we mean by a revolution. Or here, where you've got a national airline that was struggling, and I'll tell you their story as well. For every compliment, they were getting a complaint. So this really was not what they wanted. They wanted to produce this, and did it successfully in less than 24 months through a service revolution. So what do we mean? The leadership of the organization wants dramatic improvement and wants to do it fast. Number 3, leadership understands that service will have to improve inside the organization, between divisions, departments, functions, geographies, as well as to external customers. Now, we all know that when you get to a large organization, it's easy to get siloed. And what do we mean by that? You've got the customer-facing divisions and departments, but those are often just a minority of the total number of people in the organization. You've also got IT and HR and manufacturing and logistics and security and administration and all of the service that's required inside the organization. In a revolutionary situation, leadership wants to see that service improve as well, because they realize that service on the inside will also be reflected by quality of service on the outside. And finally, the 4th point when we talk about a service revolution is that we're talking something big. Usually it's an organization of at least 1,000 people. Why is that? The word revolution isn't used for small incremental improvements. The American Revolution was dramatic. It created a new country. The French Revolution overturned the monarchy and created a democratic republic. The Russian Revolution transformed the history of Eastern Europe. And then when the Berlin Wall came down, you had another revolution. The Communist Revolution in China dramatically changed the history of the country, and then it changed again during the Capitalist Revolution. All of us, by the way, are involved in something of this scale. When was the last time you hand wrote a letter, put it in an envelope, and stuck a stamp on the outside? And why have you not done that? Because all of us are involved in a global digital revolution, a dramatic change in practices. So when we talk about a service revolution, it's not for an organization that's got service in its DNA. It is where leadership needs fast improvements in service. It's for internal as well as external, and we're talking something big. Next question. Why do organizations struggle to achieve a successful service revolution? Well, guess what? It's not for lack of understanding about the value or importance of service. Everybody knows that service is what creates customer satisfaction, brings customers back, causes people to recommend you to colleagues or friends, gets you the compliments. People know that delivering an outstanding service experience will increase your market share or your share of wallet or your shareholder value. So it's not for not understanding why service is important. It's not for lack of understanding either about what to do. For example, let's say you want to live a really healthy life. Then you know already that you need to eat healthy. You know that smoking really should not be a part of your lifestyle. You know you got to tone down the stress. You know you've got to get out there and work up a sweat, and you know you need to get a good night's sleep. So it's not for lack of understanding what to do. The problem is in the common sense that people have about how to actually do it. For example, sometimes organizations and leaders say, oh, we want to dramatically improve our service, so let's focus on the service providers who are serving external customers, external customer facing. The problem is, for a revolution, that common sense is wrong. That's not the way to start. And in this webinar, I'll show you what the right way is. Or number 2, people, common sense, think that focus on skills. Write out the scripts, reinforce the standards, make sure everybody follows procedures, and that will give you outstanding service. But it won't. When you need a service revolution, that common sense is wrong. Sometimes leaders will say, well, we need a revolution, but that's a risky thing. So I'm going to start by piloting this in some small part of the organization and make sure it works before I bring it out to everyone. Unfortunately, that common sense is incorrect. It won't work. It's wrong. For a service revolution, you can't just start small, and in this webinar, I'll show you what to do instead. And finally, the fourth common sense that doesn't make sense is to focus on the final results. You know, show me the money. I want to see the CSAT score improve. Give me more market share. When you're looking to produce a revolution, those are the wrong indicators to focus on. And again, in this webinar, I'll show you what the right sense is. It's not the common sense. A service revolution needs something different. It needs a dramatic change in the culture. And producing that dramatic change won't occur by following those 4 examples of common sense. That's why we say this is 4 rules for an effective service revolution. Now here's a gentleman who understood that, and he learned it the hard way. Lou Gerstner became the CEO of IBM when IBM was really struggling. This was back in the days of big iron and dumb terminals, and they thought they were in the hardware business, and he came and he said, no, we're going to have to turn this thing around, change the culture of the organization, but not because he wanted to go after the culture. In his book, Who Says Elephants Can't Dance, he said, if I could have chosen not to tackle the IBM culture head on, I probably would not have. My bias coming in was towards better strategy, analysis, measurement. That's common sense. In comparison, changing the attitude and behaviors of hundreds of thousands of people is very, very hard. Yet I came to see that the culture isn't just one aspect of the game, it is the game. And when we're talking about producing a dramatic improvement in service fast in your organization, or building a culture of sustainable service, superior service, then you have to tackle the culture. And many organizations have what we call a confused service culture, where if you ask the employees, people on the front line, down in the organization, what's important, you'll hear service sometimes, but lots of time you'll hear sales, or cut costs, or increase productivity, or efficiency, or be lean. And we're saying no. If you want to produce a service revolution, you've got to get everybody aligned to understand what it means to serve other people well, how to implement that, and you've got to do it quickly. You've got to produce what we call an aligned service culture. How you do that, what the fundamental architecture is to engineer the development of a culture, is what you will find in the book Uplifting Service. And that architecture, the engineering, involves 3 major components. First, a foundation of teaching people about service, what most of us never learned in school. Second, providing shelter for the culture of the organization, giving it the protection it needs through the right behaviors of service leaders. And the third major component we call the 12 building blocks of service culture. You can see what they are here. And in the book, you'll find chapters about each and every one of these components. Now, knowing what the architecture looks like is one big part of it, but the other is, how do you actually implement this? How do you make this occur? And as you can see at the bottom, it says in 12, that's just 12 months. Within 1 year, how do you produce a dramatic service revolution? Well, ladies and gentlemen, here are the 4 rules for engineering a successful service revolution. Rule number 1, do not start with your customer-facing employees. Instead, involve everyone with a special focus on your internal service providers. Now, in every industry, there are people who will face the customer. These are your customer service people, your sales people, and it may be over the counter. Could be over the phone, could be over the web in writing, but you will have some people who touch and serve the external customer. Behind those folks are going to be a lot more people who are absolutely necessary, who provide the internal service so that the external facing people in your organization can provide the external service. Now let me give you an example of this. This is a telecommunications company, works B2B and B2C. They have external customers. That's the pink box. Inside the organization are the business stakeholders, and that's a direct service relationship. You can see the red arrow. But inside the organization, serving the business stakeholders, you have a whole nother team of people. And supporting those people, also inside the organization, is a whole nother group of highly skilled professional people. And the way those 2 internal groups work together has got to be like one. So there's an enormous amount of internal service going on here supporting those who are giving external service. And even that's not all. Because in a company like this, there are going to be external service providers, outsourced partners, who also provide service. So where is the need for service improvement? Is it only here, facing and touching the external customer, or is there also service here? And then also service here? And isn't it also a service relationship here? And even vertically within the organization, you've got people serving each other, and then some of those people who are purely inside during an implementation, they're also going to be touching those who serve people on the outside. So where is the need for service improvement? Is it in this green circle, or is it really in this green circle? And that first rule for a service revolution is you've got to focus on everyone, not just the external service providers. For example, in this organization, they created what they call huddles, cross-functional team meetings, where people came together across department and divisional lines to solve service problems, to give the external service providers better internal service so that you could get this kind of result. And here in the lower left-hand corner, you can see the rapid escalation and improvement of customer satisfaction scores, trouncing the competition and doing it just within a short, limited period of time. That's what we mean by a revolution. Here's another example. A national airline, Air Mauritius, that was really struggling. They'd lost a lot of money. They were rated as a 3-star airline, and there's more than 150 3-star airlines in the world, so that's nothing special. And they wanted to turn this thing around. They wanted to do it fast. They had an objective. The new CEO came in and he said, I want to hit 4-star, and I want to get to profitability, and I want to do it in 24 months. So what did they do? They went very quickly and reached 2,500 people in a short period of time, giving them fundamental service education and generating ideas and feedback. But it wasn't just the cabin crew. It wasn't just the sales staff. It wasn't only people who work at the airport checking you in and making sure your bags arrive. It was everybody in the organization. So immediately after everyone was educated on improving service, then they went into cross-functional teams to come up with projects, to identify scoping, to put those things to work. And the results were dramatic. Within the 24 months, they achieved 4-star status, they returned to profitability, and they incredibly improved this complaints to compliments ratio, where it was 1-to-1, and now they're averaging 10, 11, 12 compliments for each single complaint. This is the former CEO who's now moved on to another airline to produce a similar kind of revolution, and the executive vice president of customer experience, and of course they're smiling because they created that revolution quickly. They successfully stepped up together, and by the way, they're now taking the next step up, and they did it by following rule number 1. Don't start with only your customer-facing employees. Instead, involve everyone. And for a revolution, put a special focus on your internal service providers. Now, what about you? Who do you serve? In your position, in your role, in your business, in your job, who do you serve primarily? Are you someone who mostly touches the external customer? Or are you someone who serves mostly colleagues, internal service provider, or do you do both? This is a poll. Put your mouse out there, give us a click, let us know what you do. External, guests, members, clients. Internal, colleagues, and other departments. The poll is open. Please let us know. And here we, wow. Now this is interesting. Notice that the minority, exactly in alignment with our rule, serve only external customers. The next largest group serves primarily internal, but the vast majority of you serve both. So you recognize that only focusing on service improvement to external customers, that's not going to be enough to produce a cultural revolution for superior service. Rule number 1, don't start with customer-facing employees. Instead, involve everyone with a special focus on internal service providers. Rule number 2, don't start by training people on specific service skills or scripts and procedures. Don't start there. Instead, educate them first to a better understanding of what service excellence really means. Now that's intriguing. What does service excellence really mean? At Up Your Service, we recognize that very few people actually have a good, solid working definition for service. Profit, they can tell you how to calculate it. Speed, everybody can figure out how to measure it. Costs, you can put it on a spreadsheet. But if I ask you, what actually is service? Unfortunately, a lot of people have very weak answers to that question. And even weaker still when I say, what is service excellence? They'll say things like, make people happy, or make them very happy, or let them smile, or serve other people the way you want to be served, or the customer is always right. Well, all of that common sense is actually not solid grounding for producing a service excellent culture. We need a better definition. And at Up Your Service, the one we teach is this. First, service requires that you do something. Service is not the result. It is the taking action to do something for another person. And that something that you do has got to have a fundamental purpose. To provide somebody else with what they need, what they want, what they appreciate, what they desire, what they will benefit from. The way we say it is, service is taking action to create value for someone else. Now, this fundamental definition of service is not the same as teaching people scripts and standards and procedures. Let me show you why it's so important. We teach the 6 levels of service. And we say that down at the bottom is criminal, where you violate a legitimate minimum expectation. It's lousy. Basic service, where you just do the bare minimum. It's slow. It's incomplete. It's late. Expected service, industry standard, average, normal. Desired service, when you serve somebody else the way they like it, the way they prefer. Surprising service, unexpected value, ooh, nice surprise. And finally, unbelievable, rock their socks, blow them away, wow. Now, when we teach these 6 different levels of service, we also point out that these are not fixed. These are not stairs. This is more like an escalator, and it's always in motion, and it's always going down. Because, for example, if you do something surprising for someone, it's only going to be surprising the first time you do it. The next time it might be very nice, desired. After a while, it becomes normal, expected. And before you know it, it could be, well, no big deal, that's just basic. So then how do you continue to provide an excellent service experience? You've got to keep stepping up, not only taking action, but taking the next step up to create more value for someone else. A fundamental definition of service excellence. Now let me show you why this is so critical. Let's say you decide to open a restaurant. So you rent a location, you choose a theme, Italian, Indian, Chinese, Thai, seafood, and then you put in a kitchen and you come up with a menu and you do your advertising, but just before you open you realize we still don't have a waiter. So you run out into the labor market to hire a waiter, but there are no experienced waiters available. So you find this young guy and you bring him in and you think, oh boy, I better train him how to bring people to their table, how to present the menu, how to bring the food, how to clear the plate, how to collect the money. He now knows all the scripts and standards and procedures. But here's the problem. You open the door and the very first customers who come in to your brand new restaurant, they're business people, and they're negotiating a very big contract. And what they want is a quiet table and not to be bothered, unless the coffee is running low, and then a good waiter should have already noticed and been right there to top it up. But the very next customers who come in are tourists. They're from out of town. They're so excited to be here. They want to know about everything on the menu. They want to talk to the waiter personally. They want to sit right in the middle of the action. The very next 2 people who come in are on a romantic date. They don't care about the waiter. They care about each other. And they want the kind of service that makes them feel good to be together. And finally, the 4th customer that comes in is a couple, and they got 2 kids, and the kids are upset, and the parents are harassed and hassled, and they just want to be able to sit down, and they need some help taking care of the kids. Now, what is the likelihood that your well-trained waiter, who knows all the procedures, is actually going to deliver the kind of service that these 4 very different customers will actually appreciate and value? Well, Unfortunately, the likelihood's not very high. But why is that? Because you did teach him the standards, the skills, the scripts, the procedures, but you forgot to educate him about what does it mean to be a waiter. That's a service provider. What is service? Service is taking action to create value for someone else. The most important part of that definition is not the action you take, the scripts, the standards, and the procedures. It's how well you understand the someone else so that you can figure out and appreciate what that other person values so you can then choose the action to take. Service excellence is what people need to understand. Rule number 2 says don't start by training people just on the skills, scripts, and procedures. Focus your education to give them a better understanding of what service excellence really means. So what about your organization? Let's have a poll. How many people in your organization truly understand and deliver excellence in service? A, everybody gets it and we give it. B, the majority around here get it and they deliver. C, well, about half and half. Depends on who you get. D, it's hard to find people who always deliver great service where I work. And E, are you kidding? Nobody gets it around here. Go to the screen, use your mouse, click on the poll. How many people in your organization today truly understand and deliver service excellence? And closing the poll, let's see what we've got here. Coming up on the screen. Whoa, very small number, everybody gets it. You've got starting to show up the majority believe. Most of you, look at that, about half and half. And oh dear, it's hard to find people. Now, the good news is if you're on this webinar, you're probably not in an organization where you answered E. Are you kidding? Nobody gets it around here. But look at the number of people who are saying it's about half and half, or it's hard to find people who always deliver great service. That's why rule number 2, don't start by training more on skills, scripts, and procedures. Educate people. What does it mean to be in service? And what does it mean to keep stepping up to create more value? That is service excellence. Rule number 3, don't pilot the change. Go big. Go fast. You've got to build momentum when you're committed to creating a revolution in service and producing a real service culture. For example, this is a resort organization that used to be called Naiad. And as you can see from their financials, they were deeply, deeply struggling. This property group has hotels and resorts in a number of different countries. One of them is sort of their home base of Mauritius. And as you can see here, they were advertising the beach and the pool and the green and the sea. But of course, every resort can advertise the beach and the pool and the green and the sea. And their financial results were so difficult coming out of the global financial crisis. I mean, this is a picture they used to actually indicate where they were at. But look what they did. They dove in and created a rapid revolution. They changed the name of the company from Naiad Deluxe Resorts. They created a completely different focus, not the beach, not the pool, not the green, not the sky, but the people and the experience that people would have when they came to the resort. And they launched a gorgeous service vision called We, the people of Lux Resorts, we make each moment matter. Well, they not only had the vision and the brand, but they committed to this going big, going fast, not just piloting the change. Look at how quickly they rolled out this service education to every single person in the organization. In fact, look at this fascinating correlation between number of training hours and actual turnover or revenue consolidated across their hotels. You got a direct correlation here. The more you invest in actually training your people and educating them, in giving them a better understanding and insight about service, look what happened to the revenue going right along with it. Up to now 80 hours per person. The TripAdvisor results for this resort chain are dramatic. Prior to the revolution that they produced, they'd almost never been in the top 10, none of their resorts. Now they dominate that category across the nation. In 2 other countries, in the Maldives and Réunion, look at that, they're right up there at the top of the rankings on TripAdvisor. They did not do that through a gradual, incremental pilot program to improve service. They went for a revolution. And of course, the financial results also followed. This is where they were, and this is where they are, producing even today some of the best financial results that even they could have predicted, all based on following this rule and the other rules of building a revolution in service. Rule number 3, don't pilot. Go big, go fast. You've got to build momentum for a new culture. So what about in your organization? How do big changes occur where you work? When it's time for the organization to do something really dramatic, launch something new, turn a sharp corner, be dramatically better than before, how do you do it in your organization? Do you get it done fast and effective? Do things change more at, sort of a steady, predictable pace? That's what we do. We implement, things improve. Are you an organization where change happens very slowly? Or would you even say that big changes don't happen around here? And I can tell you, if your answer is D, then you may not be around here very long in today's global world where things are changing so fast. The question on this poll is, how fast do big changes occur in your organization? Take your mouse, give us a click, let us see your opinion. And the votes are in. Fast and effective, small minority. Steady pace, we're growing. But look at the majority here. Change happens very slowly. And folks, I think you're probably on this webinar partly because of that word revolution. Recognizing that the future is going to be dramatically different. Competition is scaling with incredible speed, and it's coming from all over the world. You really can't afford to just have gradual, incremental, slow change. Rule number 3, for a revolution, don't try to pilot the change. Go big and go fast to build momentum for the new culture. And finally, rule number 4, do not focus on traditional key performance indicators during a revolution. Now, the traditional KPIs would be things like increase in customer satisfaction, net promoter score, boost in sales, greater profitability. We're not saying those are not important indicators, but during a revolution, you need to focus on the leading revolutionary indicators of value-adding ideas and implementation of those ideas, new service actions. So what are we really saying here? We're talking about what should you measure? Which needle do you want to move? How will you know if this commitment to a better culture of service is actually working? Well, if you're in business, many senior people are going to say, show me the money. I want the ultimate objectives. I want more top-line revenue, bottom-line profit, bigger share of market, bigger wallet share. Nothing wrong with that. Except in a revolution, that's not what comes first. Those are lagging indicators. That's what comes after everything you've done. For example, at Singapore Airlines, there's a phrase that says, profit is the applause that we receive for the service performances we've already given. So rather than focusing on trying to get more profit, they focus on the service performance, knowing that the profit will come. And you may say, well, all well and good, but what do I want to measure something, so what would be a leading indicator of these lagging financial results? And that's where you look to your index scores. Your customer satisfaction score, net promoter score, wallet allocation score, your loyalty index, your employee engagement score. When those are all going up, you're going to get the ultimate objectives. The only problem with focusing on those index scores is that those are things that you do from time to time. Those are reports that get generated on a periodic basis. It's not necessarily where your finger can be on the pulse of what's happening right now, today. So what's the leading indicator today, now, that will let you know you're going to get better scores? That would be compliments. That would be positive comments. That would be when people make the effort to let you know that they're delighted with what you have done for them. Which leads us to the final step. What's the necessary precursor? What's the leading necessity in order to get that compliment, in order to get that 5-star rating, in order to get that internal wow? You've got to come up with some new idea that will actually produce more value, unexpected value, surprising value, even unbelievable value, and you can't just have the idea. You've got to actually put it into action. The problem is that senior leaders in big organizations tend to spend a lot of time focusing on the top ultimate objectives. That's what they talk about, it's what they think about, it's how they're measured. The problem with that is, where can the hundreds or thousands of people in a large organization actually make a difference every day? It's not with those lagging indicators, it's with the revolutionary leading indicators. How many new service ideas are we coming up with? And how many are we putting into action? For example, NIIT Technologies is based in India, and they wanted to produce a revolution in their culture based on new ideas, more value. So they created an internal program called Ignite. And the first stage of the program was, how many new ideas can we come up with? In the short period of just a few months, more than 2,000. Now, ideas is not enough. You've got to put them into action. So the second stage of their Ignite contest was number of ideas implemented. And of course the number dropped dramatically as people started sifting through those 2,000 ideas and deciding which ones were actually worth putting into action. And then the third stage of the contest was value produced for customers. So they started by focusing on creating many new ideas. Second step, putting those into action. And only then in the third stage, 9, 12 months into the program, hey, what was the value ultimately produced for customers? They focused on the leading indicator. Here's another organization, Lux, that I told you about, and how they ran their innovation contest. 2013, totally focusing on increasing the loyalty of guests. What can we do to make our vision, we make each moment matter, actually come alive? Take a look here at the ratings of this other resort within the group called Tamasa. They used to be never even in the top 40. Now they're ranked as number 7. What's an example of the idea they came up with? They went back into the history of customer complaints and started digging out complaints from customers that were 5 years old. Then reaching out personally to each of those people who had come to the resort from all over the world and saying, hey, we remember what happened. We felt so bad about it. We've made major revolutionary changes. We would love the privilege and the opportunity of welcoming you back, caring for you, letting you know how much we really genuinely appreciate you, and letting you see how much we've genuinely changed. What an idea. They put that idea into action. Customers started coming back, and take a look at the results that they produced in their TripAdvisor score, from below 40 to in the top 10. The second stage of that innovation contest, new ideas, not to increase the loyalty of guests, but to increase the loyalty of team members. Because as that new brand came out and these amazing service results were created, all of the other resort properties wanted to hire away these wonderful service providers at Lux. So they created another innovation contest, new ideas, new actions. But let's do it this time to keep the best people with us working at the resort. And then finally, in 2015, they're doing right now, innovate to increase revenues. And you know what? It's working. This chart shows what's called RevPAR, revenue per available room, which means you're actually making more money for each person that comes to the resort. How do they do that? They didn't focus on getting the money. They focused on the leading indicators of coming up with more new, better service ideas and putting the best of those ideas into action. What about where you work? What does your company currently measure? What is the indicator that your organization uses to see whether or not your service is a success, or whether or not your service is improving, or whether or not your culture of service is strong and getting stronger? Take your mouse right now and let us know. What does your company measure today? What do they track? Complaints? Compliments? Are you a Net Promoter Score company asking that ultimate question? Would you recommend us to a colleague or a friend? Do you measure share of wallet, or what can be called the wallet allocation score? In other words, do people bring more of their spend to you or to your competition? And then D, do you actually track the number of new service ideas generated by your people, and do you track the number of those ideas that are put into action? Let's take a look at our poll results. And that's exactly what I expected. Because complaints and compliments, they land on your doorstep. They show up in your email box. They're written on the comment card. They land somewhere where you can't ignore it. You've got to deal with them. So since you've got to deal with them, it's easy to count them. Second, Net Promoter Score. It's an invented metric, and it has to do with asking a simple question and then getting the answer and tabulating how many detractors do you have, how many genuine promoters do you have, subtract the detractors from the promoters, and you get your Net Promoter Score. It's a widely recognized metric, and many of you use it. Share of wallet. How much are we getting compared to the competition? Hey, that one's easy to measure as well. You can find out what's someone's total spend and what percentage of that came to you. Is it increasing or decreasing? But here's what I'm concerned about. Look at D and E. The number of new ideas. Do you have a thermometer on the wall? Are you tracking? Are you counting? Does your department have a goal for number of new ideas this month? Does your division have a target for number of new ideas you want to generate this quarter? Or number of new ideas put into action? That's E on our poll. Do you actually track the number of those that you're putting into action? And the vast majority in both D and E say no. That's a problem, because the fourth rule is that you should be tracking those revolution indicators. So let's do a quick review. Rule number one, don't start with customer-facing employees. Instead, involve everyone. Rule number two, don't start by training skills, scripts, and procedures. Instead, educate people to a better understanding of what service is and service excellence really means. Rule number three, don't pilot a revolution. You've got to go big and go fast to build momentum for the new culture. And rule number four, don't focus on those traditional KPIs during the revolutionary phase. Focus on the revolution indicators, value-adding ideas and new actions. Once your revolution is succeeding, by all means bring attention back to those traditional KPIs, but not when you're driving a revolution. Now, Up Your Service works with clients all over the world, in different industries all over the world, and in 14 different languages all over the world, helping leaders and organizations to produce these kinds of revolutionary results. We've been doing it for so long, we know what the architecture looks like. We understand what it is you need to actually do to engineer the development of a culture, and we can help your organization do that successfully over a very short period of time with an implementation roadmap that's built on best practices, case studies, many successful examples from all over the world. This webinar has been named Engineering a Service Revolution, and we chose those words very carefully. Sometimes people, when they hear the word service, they think it's the soft stuff. When they hear service culture, they say, oh, that's airy-fairy, it's fluffy. We're saying by no means. If you want service to be your sustainable competitive advantage, then you should look at it like you're engineering a project. And if you're in a situation where you need a dramatic change quickly, you need to engineer a service revolution. It is possible to establish a strong service culture and to improve service quality fast, but you got to know the rules. And today in the webinar, it's been a pleasure to share 4 of those fundamental rules for success with you. We're now shifting to the question and answer component of today's webinar, and we've been getting questions in throughout the webinar, so allow me a moment here. I'm going to read to you the first question that came in. Thank you for the question. Ron, why are you so avid and passionate about this whole idea of service? Well, I get asked this question all the time, and I think you can tell from my tone of voice and our involvement in this whole field, I really genuinely believe it. And here's why. Human beings are the species on this planet that needs service more than any other. Think about it if you have kids. At what age are your children going to be self-sufficient? right? You've probably got a pretty big number in there. A baby is born and won't survive without an enormous amount of service. We serve each other when we're young, as we get older, adolescents, adults. When people get very old, it all comes back full circle. I think that service to each other is the fundamental reason that we're here. And so, well, I'm a man on a mission, and our company is on a mission to help you improve the service that you provide to your colleagues inside and to your customers on the outside. It'll make the world a better place. Question number 2 that came in. What are some key change management tools that you recommend for team members performing the service to make them want to do a better job? That question came in from Baldeep. Thank you. And Baldeep, what I would say here is that the fundamental tool, since you're talking at a management level, is that you've got to get the entire management and leadership team to understand that there is a proven framework that they can follow and implement together. If you don't show a management team that there's a model, there's a methodology, there's a proven path that they can follow together, then what happens is many people will understand that there's a problem, but they'll all have different ideas about how to go tackling that problem. And so some people will do training in this, and some will do more standards on that, and some will implement more technology, and some people will be pushing in other areas. That won't work. In order to actually produce a revolution, you've got to get everybody in the management and leadership team to see that architecture that I showed you earlier, to understand the components, to understand that in an implementation over, let's say, your first 1 year, there's a model to be able to follow. There's a proven path. That path itself is the fundamental change management tool. And if you've listened on this webinar, I'd say you can take up the responsibility to share this recording, or share a copy of the book, or share all of the tremendous resources that are on our website so that your management team sees those tools exist and understand that they can implement and use those tools together. Next question. Is the service revolution time-bound? And can we identify when to stop, or is it a continuous process? Great question. So let's go back in history. A revolution is a dramatic, substantial change that tends to occur very quickly. And after a revolution, there's usually a period of consolidation of some sort. Institutions, practices, standards, behaviors start to settle down. The same thing can be true when you produce a service revolution in your organization. You make a dramatic change. Internal service improves dramatically. Number of new ideas occur. You start to see the results of compliments and 5-star ratings and thumbs up and coming in. Then you start to see your index scores moving, and ultimately you'll enjoy the ultimate business benefits. Now, you can't rest on your laurels. If you produce a revolution and say, well, we did that, okay, let's go back to the way things were, it will decline. It will collapse. It will ultimately fail. So what I would say in answer to your question here is that you need to initially produce the revolution, change people's understanding, commitment, and behavior towards each other as colleagues, as well as collectively towards your customers and clients on the outside of the organization. And then when the revolution has occurred, continue using those building blocks to support the culture that you've produced. Continue to make continuous evolution after you've successfully produced the revolution. That's another reason why we use that architectural shape of a house, and we talk about engineering, because you don't produce a house and then just walk out of it. You produce a house and then you live inside it. And as you live inside it, you keep it clean. You renovate from time to time. You put on a new coat of paint. You mop the floors. You incrementally maintain what you've already produced through your successful revolution. And the final question today is, how do you convince top management if they don't get the point on their own? If they don't believe that revenue is a lagging indicator? Okay, good question. Most of the organizations that we work with, there's somebody in an important leadership position who has come to the realization that service is going to be the essential competitive advantage. You're inside of an industry where the product is commoditized. What you've got, the competition can match. Take, for example, financial services, where something can be copied from bank to bank or insurance company to insurance company just so quickly. Or in any of the manufacturing industries, or even in a hospitality industry where your pillow and my pillow, your room service menu, my room service menu, these things can be matched nose to nose. So how are you going to differentiate in that kind of environment? Someone realizes that it is the experience the customer has. It is the service that we provide that can be our competitive differentiator. But that does not mean that everybody on the leadership team gets that. So someone who has some authority, somebody who understands this and has insight, has got to take responsibility for bringing the leadership team together. And then during that period of time together, usually it takes us one full day to get the leadership team together in what we call a service leadership workshop. And what we're doing in that workshop is the answer to your question, showing them examples, showing case studies, showing practical, successful results that have been achieved by other leaders and other leadership teams in other organizations, sometimes in the same industry, sometimes across other industries, sometimes in the same geography, sometimes in other parts of the world, so that people who have risen up to the point of leadership within an organization can see that they're not alone. They're not the only ones who have ever tried to tackle this. Other people have done it before them. There is a proven path, and that path can be followed. And the leadership team needs to come together to walk on that path together and walk everyone else in the organization down that successful path to achieving a sustainable and superior culture of uplifting service.